Okay, do slideshow. Everyone see my slides? Thumbs up.
We sure can. Thank you.
Okay, of course. So my name is Cindy Liu, and I'm going to normalize the practice of image descriptions for accessibility purposes. I am a middle-aged Chinese lady. I have salt and pepper hair, although more pepper than salt at the moment, which I'm thankful for. It's long. I am wearing hoop earrings, a denim shirt, and I have brown glasses on. So nice to meet everyone on this Zoom. Um, so just to get an idea of who's in the room, how many of you currently identify as belonging to the disability community? I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. If you want to give a thumbs up, if you want to put something in the chat, you blink twice at me, it's all good. I'm just trying to understand who's here. Um, um, well, the chances are if you don't currently identify as belonging to the disability community, the chances are in your lifetime you will. You will be disabled temporarily or permanently, accident, illness, or the natural aging process, and or be a caregiver. Everybody is touched by disability. It impacts everybody. It doesn't really care. It's really fair. It doesn't care if you went to Harvard, community college, if you're rich or poor, your gender, your ethnicity, or where you live. Um, Only about 6% of people are born with a disability. And it's really, what I'm noticing about our culture now, it's different than how I grew up. We're seeing people in public and leadership positions um, aging into disability or becoming disabled. And that has created a lot of opportunity for conversation. Even two senators on the Senate floor were using assistive technology for their work. We're seeing celebrities like Selma Blair, Christina Applegate, Michael J. Fox um, not be ashamed of their disability and really use it as a way to move culture and mindset and conversation. But there's a big difference between them and the average individual. They have more means. And there are 61 million people living with disabilities in the United States. If you include the caretakers, that moves that number to more than 100 million people in the United States. That's an astoundingly large community. It's roughly a third of the population in the United States. Most of the caretakers are unpaid workers, and it's estimated that that is valued at over $600 billion of unpaid care work. There's a saying, you're one in a million. Well, I'm just one of the 100 million. I come to the disability justice journey through motherhood. I'll share a little bit of that journey. My eldest has Down syndrome. And when she was born, I instantly became aware of the barriers and the bigotry that existed. And I would do everything, and I vowed that I would do everything in my power so she would inherit a world where she is valued and where she can thrive. I got to be honest, I learned a lot about myself. Like this quote says, my brain didn't know the term systemic ableism, but my heart certainly did. And when she came into our lives, it was crystal clear. I learned a lot about myself, my own biases, and of course, what disability means. So I come to this group and my work not as an expert. I'm a mom, and I come with a mother's heart. But in the 10 years, I've done some stuff. Including serving on advisory positions on state task force, policy advocacy at the state and federal level. I was really proud of our advocacy efforts this past budget cycle in California. We got Governor Newsom to sign a bill into law supporting inclusive college for people with intellectual developmental disabilities. Um, I've been featured on NPR, and probably the most scary thing I've ever done was a TEDx talk. So now I'm poking my head into rooms like this because this number scares me. It makes me really, really angry, and it moves me and motivates me to make change. It's an absolutely horrific number. 80% of Americans with disabilities are unemployed or not even in the workforce. And it's not a future that I want for my daughter or her cohort and friends. Being locked out of work means being locked out of the American dream. I mean, let's be honest, many of us, when it comes to tax season, are really trying to minimize our tax burden. And here I am wanting my daughter to pay taxes, to be employed. And it's an injustice that I just couldn't allow. So, born out of that drive is Luhu's Cafe, and that's how I became part of the cooperative world. I do believe that cooperatives are the best path for economic equity for people with disabilities. We're just getting started. I was part of the Start.coop Accelerator in spring of 23 that was funded by AARP Foundation. Um, I was happy to be awarded as the finalist for the National Cooperative Bank Innovation Award. And I've been working with the Harkin Institute, partnering with them on some consumer research for the cafe and participating in Stanford's Neurodiversity Project. I'm not here to talk about Luhu's Cafe, um, but in case anyone has an extra $250,000 lying around and feeling charitable, feel free to DM me. My goal here today is to really provide everyone some basic information on disability. So, and social cooperatives. And if social cooperatives are the solution to lift communities out of poverty and unemployment, if we're going to have to live up to that promise, it has to include the 100 million people in the disability community and tackle systemic ableism. And I want to share with you basically a primer on three main areas of the system, barriers: education, healthcare, and employment. How are we doing so far, everybody? Thumbs up. Okay, thank you, because I'm going to be Oprah right now. We're going to play a game. If you feel inclined, please, anyone with the last name starting with A through F, change your name to Lucy, please. People with the last names G through W, Mary, change your name to Mary if you want to play along. And my Alice's are going to be X through Z. All right, ready? All right. So my Lucy's, you are about 7.3 million kids in the United States. You're a 16-year-old in high school, a junior with autism. You live in a fairly affluent community. Your schools are pretty highly rated, but your experience is completely different. You've been educated in separate classrooms, only with kids with disabilities, and haven't been in the gen ed classroom with non-disabled kids. You're at an age, if anyone's familiar with the IEP process, it stands for Individual Education Plan. I won't get in the weeds on that, but you're at the age where you and your parents have to decide, are you going to graduate with a certificate of completion or a high school diploma? And you're really worried because you're at that cliff, that proverbial cliff of what happens after graduation. If you have limited college and career options, you've been not part of the non-disabled community, and special education has never been fully funded. It really is a cliff to couch pipeline. So I want to give you an example. This is actual data from Lucy. It's actually my school district. We live in what's considered a fairly affluent district in California. Take a look at that number that I've circled. 6.8% of students with disabilities are considered to be college and career ready upon graduation. Now, if you go back, remember that scary, maddening 80% unemployment rate? It's really linked together, and the picture of graduation to couch pipeline becomes really clear when you're looking at the data. And by the by, this is considered a good school district that Lucy's in. So as we're thinking about social cooperatives and how to be innovative and how to build that in the US, what if we educated our kids with disabilities? Can we imagine our Lucy's, 7.3 million of you, educated and ready for college and career? What kind of innovations and workforce could be cultivated, and how many people could be lifted out of poverty? And how can social cooperatives be part of that solution? All right, so where are my Marys? Mary, girl, you are struggling. But you're not alone. You're part of the sandwich generation. There's approximately 80 million Americans considered in the sandwich generation. You're a 55-year-old woman. You're caring for elders and young children. Your dad recently passed. Your mother has been denied his Social Security spousal benefits. She has Alzheimer's, and Lucy is your daughter. You've got a good paying job as a director of marketing, decent benefits, and you get a flexible work schedule. But Mary, you spend about 20 plus hours a week caring for your mom and helping Lucy with her therapies and supports, and it's not paid. And you are in the thick of it. You are at the nexus of all these systemic barriers and systemic ableism. So filling out insurance forms. Someone used the term bureaucratic trauma recently. I wish I remembered who it was because it's not my term. I'd love to credit them, but that's what Mary is going through. Mary's in the room. The bulk of the people in the room are going through this, dealing with insurance companies, forms, Medicaid requests for your mom, attending IEPs, the healthcare system. But, thankfully, you and your husband are healthy so far. I just want to pause to think about healthcare and what shift we could make in how it's linked to ableism. So our cultural attitudes on healthcare is really about the ability to work. Like, think about your own internalized conversations, or I'll talk about me. I have a pain in my shoulder. I have a ripped rotator cuff, but I refuse to go see a doctor because I can still work. It's not that bad. I can work through it. I can't afford it. So these are some of the conversations that we have with ourselves. It has to be absolutely disabling before some people can get to care. And then if you think about the kind of care that's available, it's segmented. So we're looking at things like memory care, urgent care, elder care, child care, cancer care, intensive care, rare disease care. What if healthcare was shifted from a segmented care to a continuum of a care? And what if we viewed healthcare as a way to enable somebody? So our cultural attitudes on healthcare in the United States is the baseline, is the discriminate, is the definition of ableism. If we think back to our own internal conversations. What I think is a huge shift is seeing healthcare as supporting your ability to work. And that makes a huge difference. Seeing it as an investment. And, I was thinking about if a person breaks their leg, and they need crutches, the crutch is a support that allows accessibility into the world. But think of all the different ways out of context we use the word crutch in a very negative way. And that is linked to ableist feelings. So my Alice is in the room. Okay, Alice, you guys are, I might swear, you guys are badasses. You are the epitome of the American dream. Your parents are immigrants. You worked your way out of poverty in one generation. You have a master's degree. You've written 3 books. You're invited to speak around the world, and you have your own consulting business. You were born with spina bifida. You use a wheelchair and a breathing device your whole life, and you're 50 now. But you require you require ongoing and daily supports like personal assistance to get in the chair, to plug your breathing device in. But then once that's done, you live independently and you're ready to go. Yet somehow the world doesn't value your contributions. You're viewed as a burden. Yet you are the living example of the American dream, and you're stuck in a poverty spin cycle. Clients want to pay you more, but because of the social services that you get and benefits from Social Security, you are limited in your assets to $2,000 if you're single, which you are, $3,000 if you're married. And you have to be very, very mindful of your earnings and what you can charge, because there's a savings limitations in your ABLE account. You're only allowed to save $100,000. And if by chance you pass away, there's a clawback clause that by some calculation or formula, whatever's left in that account, the government can claw back based on value of the supports that you required. So it's a real vicious spin cycle of poverty. Disabled Americans are the only population in the United States that are punished for wanting to work and punished for wanting to save. And the line of thinking regarding care and healthcare, all of this links together. It's a chain. So if our kids aren't educated, they're not college and career ready, there's a high unemployment rate. If you're a caregiver, that has a huge economic impact on you, 100 million people in the US. And if you do require ongoing care that leads to your independence and allows you to work, you're stuck in a system that punishes you for wanting to work and trying to save. So what if we remove those assets and savings limitations for disabled workers? I think in America, we also have this notion that support is bootstrapped support, but you can't bootstrap your way out of spina bifida or Down syndrome or autism. And this view of ongoing assistance needs to really change. So again, imagine what 100 million people in the disabled community, putting them to work, providing opportunities, allowing opportunities to accumulate wealth. What can that do? So I want to just pause the Oprah game. Anyone who did change their names can change it back. And really, if you want to add into the chats, please feel free to. But again, if it's not something you're comfortable with, that's okay too. I just want to ask an open-ended question. How did you feel when you were assigned? How do my Lucy's feel? How does Mary feel, or Alice, when you were assigned these avatars? Did you feel punished? Did you feel angry, ashamed, discouraged? Any hardships? Anyone want to add into the chat? That'd be awesome. And what I want to basically say is you're not alone on this journey. I think myself, I've had to really challenge my own internalized ableism. Thank you, Sharon, basically Mary's life. Frustrated and stuck. Thank you. Outraged. Human dignity in this situation. So as I said, I'm with you. I came to this journey. My daughter has Down syndrome. I've had to challenge myself and my own notions of internalized ableism. And I didn't grow up seeing individuals with disabilities in the community, in my education. So we were taught to be nice, to not stare, rather than to seeing a person as a human being. Anyway, astounded that the stress of the caregiver can be equivalent to that of a combat vet. Thank you for reading the side notes. I appreciate that. All right. So, social cooperatives, here we are. If we're going to live up to the promise of social cooperatives and tax law changes, I'm proposing 3 major shifts. Start identifying yourself as disabled. Challenge your own internalized ableism. As I said, we are part of the disability community through all the different ways, and it's a very, very high likelihood that we will be. Start seeing care as a support system, healthcare as a support system and a continuum, so that it allows you and enables you to work and to be independent, not as a disabling mechanism, or not as a mechanism that you need only when you're disabled. And support policies that smash systemic barriers. There are lots of bills in Congress that are aiming to increase Social Security allowances. We've got to remove some of those caps for saving. 14C is a certificate that's allowed federally that allows people with disabilities to be paid below minimum wage. And IDEA is the major law for inclusive education, and that's never been fully funded. So we can do that. The other thing that I want us to think about as we're moving forward is, I know our models for social co-ops are Italy and Korea. And I think if we are going to think about designing it for the United States, we have to really look at the care systems and find case studies that are similar to our care systems for healthcare. Okay. All right, Lucy, Mary, and Alice, the future is bright. Lucy is actually based on a real person. Her name is Liz Weintraub. Not everything about Lucy's is Liz's life, but Liz is a person with an intellectual disability. She's been married to her husband for 19 years. She's a highly sought after policy advocate. She has her own podcast called Tuesdays with Liz, and she gets major players from the Hill to talk about policy, breaking it down in plain language, and really expressing exactly how those policies impact people's life. Mary's me and all of us. But I'm still, it's hard, man. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm very inspired and motivated and see the collective thought in this room. And there's a lot of, and the cooperative community is really amazing. So I'm very proud and hopeful. And Alice is based on Alice Wong. Alice Wong is a Chinese American. She has written 3 books. She does have a master's degree. But Alice Wong is also Judy Heumann, the disability rights icon that got the Americans with Disabilities Act passed into law, and Ed Roberts. So, you know, but despite their sort of beating the odds, they're not reaping the financial benefits due to the systemic barriers in the same way. All right, so one more. Okay, all right. No action is too small. I like to end on hope and inspiration to making real change. So I hope you guys can see this. So by pushing that little teeny tiny domino, it's not too small that we can make the huge change that we need to make in the system. I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry. That's my contact info. I'm going to stop sharing for any questions and then have a chance to look at the chat.
Thank you, Sandy. That was fantastic. Great. Yeah, before we go further, let's just let anybody that wants to chime in and offer thoughts on what we just saw. Feel free. Let's reflect on this for a minute. Raise your hand or drop a question in the chat.
I'm seeing let's see.
Yeah, Sharon.
Guilt, passing with unearned privilege, non-visible disabilities. Thank you for that reminder. Too familiar of experience. Federal disability policies based on preventing perceived freeloading. That's a very good point. Care as a continuum. Thank you, Elias. In a sense, mate. It's sorry, I'm not in a sense, mate. Why, Rami? Would you mind sharing what that means?
Yeah, Rami, you want to say something? Are you there?
Yeah, I think it might actually dovetail a little bit nicely with Sharon since she's had her hand up. If it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and defer.
Okay, I just wanted to say, so I'm somebody who I was diagnosed with ADHD in my mid 40s, and I had never realized that I spent, you know, it was something where like I always had this disability but never knew it, and it changed my life, you know, and also caused me to identify and empathize a lot more with other people realizing this. So and I would also like to expand. I mean, I think it is important because everybody either, you know, becomes disabled or has some temporary disability, but there's also this very expansive category of things that are either invisible or that we don't maybe perceive of, but like so neurodivergence, so ADHD and autism on all different levels of autism, because there's lots of people with autism who are not like severely disabled, but have struggles every day. And then there's people, I have a brother, I said I'm Mary. I have an older brother that I help take care of in Chicago who has an undiagnosed mental illness, who lived with my parents his whole life. And talking to other people, I've met so many people who have a similar situation like that. And so it's everywhere. And I agree that the first step to doing this is broadening our understanding, and which doesn't mean to belittle people with physical and very serious disabilities, but broadening our understanding of all these things, because there's solidarity in these things, rather than saying, you know, my thing's worse than your thing or whatever. And I believe, you know, and since it's so pervasive, that right there is an opportunity to, you know, create a wellspring of activism when people start to understand. Because I was one of those people who had a disability and didn't even understand, and used to be so much more ableist, because I just grew up thinking, oh, because I was also like very smart. And so people, you know, it's all these different categories of things. So creating solidarity, I think, is a key.
Yep, thank you for that, Sharon, and for bringing, you know, shining light on non-visible disabilities. Um, I I think it's just a fascinating way to collectively think about how social cooperatives and us and our individual work can create a truly inclusive environment. And inclusion starts in the design phase, but we've got to smash some of these systemic barriers that are unique to the disability community. And it's a huge community. Like, I didn't identify myself except through motherhood. And I often feel for my friends and community members who have non-visible disabilities. Um, I think coming to acceptance, coming to understanding, coming to a point of advocating is a bit of a longer journey than maybe mine was, because my daughter has it's genetic and you can see it. Same with physical disabilities. They're visible.
Other thoughts? No, I have a question, Cindy, kind of a little more subjective question. When you heard about social co-ops and the way they operate, I wondered if there was anything particular about their dynamics that kind of appealed to you as really a new way to go, a real innovation. Anything in particular kind of stands out to you about the way they deliver care, you know, particularly, let's say, in the Italian context?
Well, remember my slide where I said I'm not an expert. I'm essentially an opinionated mom.
Good, good.
And I'm still learning a lot about social cooperatives. I will tell you, my steadfast stubbornness in terms of creating jobs and employment is moving away from the notion that employment is charity. And so by extension of that, me wanting my Luhu's Cafe to be a for-profit entity was very, very important to my mission. Now, starting it up, funding that is really, really challenging. So marrying the nonprofit idea as a way to support Luhu's Cafe is how I started. To answer your question about social cooperatives, I think looking at how we can really create that bridge and this sort of ecosystem together is the challenge. But if we're looking at Italy and Korea, we really do have to see, are there systemic barriers to including a huge 100 million people, similar to the systemic barriers in the US? That's where I still have a huge question mark that I want to learn more about. So my understanding of Italy and Korea is they have a form of social care and social health care. I don't know the cultural attitudes on accessing care and in general disability. Do they have savings caps the way we do? Do they have asset limitations? So those are outstanding questions for me that I want to learn more.
Yeah, Remy?
I suppose, Elias, that really was in 1987 and 1988, the prescription that the pediatric neurologist gave my mother and myself after I was kicked in the head during a gym class and had a very, very, very hard few months that fall. And the school, to avoid a lawsuit, just kind of went along with what our Colorado Children's Hospital pediatric neurologist suggested. They didn't think that the practice of social cooperative as a prescription of neurology, in a sense of neuroplasticity, the idea was that I'd be, lost in kind of special education, but it worked. And the reason that I'm kind of diving into it in this is in this space, the unearned privilege of being born in Boulder, Colorado as a 6.5 foot tall white guy, that offered me enough passing and privilege to allow some of my neurology to catch up. But it was in the social sense, in the cooperative economy of people looking out for me and people going that extra. It was the actual practice of the social cooperative that created the opportunity for me to go on to get my interdisciplinary studies and then the master's degree. And so I kind of made a career of passing in this cooperative kind of solidarity that brings us all here now today. And so then I had a neuro infection that bit 10 years ago, and it's been but we're here now, and this conversation, this is where the robust of tomorrow will be, so that the 14-year-olds who are stressed by how these systems have maybe not allowed all of us to have the voices that I'm taking the platform right now to have, that we get to listen to more, so that the designs of the infrastructure, the economic models, the lending strategies, I mean, the granting structures with scientists, like all of this then over the next 10, 5, 15, depending, though we all get to participate in co-creating those same models. And this is such a key and critical time. And Cindy, thank you so much. And your listening, uh, and so that's my voice for this time. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Remy.
I would also recommend, which I didn't put in there because there's a lot of huge cultural shifts in those 3 boxes of identifying ourselves as part of the community that we will inevitably be part of, but doing that early. But I think in all of our individual works and work cooperatively together, we need people with disabilities in the room. So I myself identify as a caregiver and do my best for my daughter, but part of my journey, she's 12, is learning what her self-determined life looks like. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat. But there's a saying in our community, nothing about us without us. And Liz Weintraub lives that to fullest in her advocacy. She will not allow tokenism. She will not allow being on the front of the bus just to sit there for PR purposes. And I think even though I'm representing and identify as part of the community, I will always pass the mic to somebody who has a disability. And I think in our design phases, as I said, in our individual work and collective work, we have to find those representations, because there is diversity in the disability community as well. Of course there is, right? We're not no community is a monolith. And so that's another thing that I would ask that you walk away with and consider, and collectively, how might we, right?
Next one.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I mean, this is very, very powerful. I really, really appreciate you. I think one of the things why we actually want to create a social cooperative is to create job for the disability community. And this is really huge. And one of the things that I think we may have to rethink about is the speed of work. Because again, I don't think we can think of the work at kind of regular speed where everybody, because again, disability community will go with a much slower speed, right? To get things done. But it's really important to create that environment that it's okay to get things done slowly. So there's a one social cooperative in South Korea that actually, like Cindy, the parents of the who actually have the kids with a disability actually create this business, and they are actually bakers. And now actually this social cooperative is really, really huge, but the workplace is, the motto is that go slow. It's totally okay to go slow. So it's not like everything gets done really fast, but this workplace is a very safe workplace where you go by your own space. So I think that was a very powerful message that the social cooperative wants to deliver, carry on that message. And I think that when we design our social cooperatives for the disability community, this could be one of the powerful messages that we tell the community, other community, that yes, that's why I think social cooperative is really important to have for this disability community. So I just kind of listening to your stories, I keep thinking about how more humanistic workplace that we could actually create, through that social cooperative as well. And I think, I don't know exactly what the details should entail, but I think that this is such a powerful reason as to why we are here, to really support them and see care as a support system and continue.
I really appreciate your comments, and I want us all to reframe what employment is and how to value employees. So there was one thing, Minsun, that you said that sort of, I'm on this learning journey as well. But being disabled does not mean that you work slowly. And when we are valuing workers, we're not necessarily, this is where the Section 14C law comes from. It's from the 19th, a little in the weeds, but I'll give you a little bit of history. It's from the 1938 Fair Labor and Standards Act, Section 14C. During 1938, we were in the US, the sort of manufacturing revolution, right? So the premise of 14C certifications and why you can pay someone with disability less than minimum wage is this notion of how many widgets can a human being produce per hour. That is a very antiquated way of thinking about and valuing all humans, whether you have a disability or not, especially we're in the tech age. But the 14C and how they do some of that calculus is, and by the way, Goodwill Industries is one of the industries that bases their financial model on 14C certificates. So if a non-disabled person can produce X amount of 100 widgets in an hour, and a disabled person can only produce 30, they make that calculus of a percentage, and that's how much less you get paid. So there are workers in the United States that get paid $2.38. So I love the idea of the bakery in Korea. I think that is amazing. But in the work that we're doing together, and this is part of challenging our own internalized notions of what a disabled person is and what they can produce, and how the workspace can be designed to be inclusive and maybe even around abilities. There's a cafe, not that this is the exact model, but it's an interesting model because there's a cafe in Japan that all the servers have Alzheimer's. And it is 100% guaranteed that whatever you ordered is whatever you asked for is not what's going to arrive on your dinner plate. And the whole community is aligned to that experience and allowing individuals aging through Alzheimer's, living with memory challenges, to be part of the community, and everyone is together. That is an example of designing work and designing experience to make it fully inclusive and that everybody has a sense of belonging. So it's not easy to do, Minsoon, certainly. Like, as I'm thinking about my own business model, what products we're offering, I'm thankful that we're in the tech era, because it's not about widgets per hour. And there are many people who are disabled that can work real fast.
Call on Tom Llewellyn, because I have a feeling that his background is shareable, may be reminding him of some projects and work that's relevant to this that he might have seen. Tom, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, first, just as a reflection, I mean, there's also the you were talking about that cafe. There's a number of examples of dining in the dark where all of the servers are blind, right? And they're able to make their way around all the tables and do all the serving and everything like that, just as well, if not better, better. They've got this other sensory perception than those with sight. And so again, it's like, yeah, the designing of the structures to be able to meet the abilities. And I really like the framing of alter-abled. It's something that's used by a community I'm part of at the Oregon Country Fair and others, and just thinking about the other abilities. And blindness is one example of that, right? Of being able to have other types of sensory perception and abilities that folks don't have. And so how do we design systems and spaces that celebrate those differences and put people in positions to succeed, at what they're more than capable of doing, and finding a sense of purpose and self-worth from being able to excel, right? And so that was what I was just thinking of, listening to what was just said before this, of kind of more shareable type care work, right? And systems that are set up. I mean, one that I love from Japan, this isn't directly related to neurodivergence in any way, but in Japan, there's the Nippon Active Light Club, which is this very interesting model where there's, it's come up, the movements of people to cities in large ways, and being away from their parents and family members, and wanting to be able to maintain those same traditional systems of care, but not actually being a child, not being in a physical location and be able to support their parents as they age. And so the Nippon Active Life Club has it's kind of like almost like a time bank. A young person can, an older person who is able to contribute to their community, to support others in their community, they're able to get credits by offering support for later when they need it, or for a different type of support that they might need. And their children, by taking care of older folks or people that have other needs within their own communities, where the cities that they live, and then those credits transfer back to their parents or family for their family member, but they're indirectly caring for their family member. It's it is essentially, it's a care cooperative in Japan. That's a really beautiful model. And so yeah, that was something that I've been thinking of a little bit throughout this series of sessions that we've been doing, but especially thinking about it today.
Thank you, Tom. We were going to have another speaker today. Maybe it worked out just as well that this topic is so rich that we stayed on it, which is fine. I did invite Kevin Bayuk. I don't know if he's still here. I think he's here, from Lyft Economy. And the reason I invited him, because the other speaker was going to talk about healthcare co-ops, in particular one in Nelson, British Columbia, which maybe we'll come back to another time. But I wanted to give Kevin a chance to say hello and just give us a little bit of an idea about this healthcare research that his group has been doing, if he's available. And there he is in person. Hey, Kevin.
Sure. Hello. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to share a little bit, and I can be brief and maybe say high level and salient and stay on topic. But when you look at the American healthcare kind of landscape, some certain things become really obvious that there's some perverse incentives both in the kind of coverage model and in the care model, how care is provisioned. Both of those perverse incentives have roots in capitalism or racialized capitalism or profit taking in general. But it's worth knowing what those are, and then knowing that there's kind of alternatives that are both emergent on the edges and structures that could potentially be hacked or adjusted and experimented with to actually transform both the notion of coverage and care. And both of those require kind of a community interpretation. And I'll give one example maybe of something that we don't see as yet existing, and maybe the speaker who's going to share, Elias from British Columbia, might be prefigurative of what we think is possible. But when we look at the care, how care is provisioned, I first want to just name the perverse incentive, which is just kind of this wicked problem that where care providers are immersed in the business as usual economy, and so they need to make a living as well to meet their needs. And so let's say you were a manual therapist or a psychotherapist or something like that. But let's say, imagine for a moment, you're really good and really talented, and a patient came to you and you could cure them or make them better or never have to see you again. You would be a terrible business person, right? Because you wouldn't have the repeat customers. And so I don't know that any care provider deals with that idea seriously, but that there's this perverse incentive deep in the root of how care is provisioned that needs to be addressed. And I want to share the example of there is an emergent structures around how care is provisioned. An example is something called direct primary care. DPC is a field that's growing rapidly. About 15 years ago, there were like 10 direct primary care clinics in the United States. Now there's over 3,000. And I think they're deeply problematic. So I'm not trying to elevate them. I don't want you to start looking at DPC and say, oh, there's the solution. But I do think that there's an insight there that might be adjustable to a cooperative formation, maybe even a social cooperative formation. Direct primary care is structured where the patient population pays into the care clinic, whether they're ill or well, like a monthly, almost like a subscription fee, right? And so in that sense, the incentive for the clinic, their ability to generate income to meet their needs is limited by the number of people they could serve. And therefore, you could say the number of people they could serve is based on how well the population they're serving is. So all of a sudden, the incentive is to be like, no, I need you to be really well. So the emphasis on direct primary care is usually on preventive wellness. Please stay out of the clinic, stay healthy. Let's take a look at your diet. Let's take a look at your lifestyle. Let's look at the social determinants of health. What all the other factors that are related to wellness are part of the remit for direct primary care. I mentioned direct primary care is also, I think, problematic in that it's still oriented around a profit motive. So maybe direct primary care as it exists today in this country is like, let's serve wealthy, healthy people because that's a good way to make a lot of money, something like that. But what if there was a multi-stakeholder cooperative, patient-physician cooperative, or a social cooperative community institution of a direct primary care clinic, such that the ownership of the entity itself, should it make any surplus or profit, those surplus or profit could be determined and controlled by the cooperative in terms of what happens to it to maybe address social determinants of health or reduce the costs for some populations. That type of community governance is something that we think could be very important in the care provisioning landscape, even if we could figure out the coverage model, or maybe the United States finally gets single payer Medicare for all or something like that, which we could talk about the medical cost sharing networks that exist in religious communities in the United States is another hackable but deeply problematic cooperative structure around health provisioning. So Elias, maybe I could link to some of the research we've been doing. The interviews just put a little document if people want to go further. I just think there are these structures and institutions that are alternative from the mainstream landscape of racialized capitalism, disease care, or whatever we call the healthcare system in the United States. But these alternatives are problematic, but maybe adjustable with a social cooperative lens. And we're looking to pilot some of those types of projects and work with people who are communities that are wanting to see those types of institutions emerge.
That's great work. This is a new subject to us. It needs further, much more exploration. Hello to Georgia, who just joined us. Georgia Argyle from Nelson, British Columbia. I guess we're going to have to reschedule that conversation because we only had an hour today, Georgia. But it is the Community First Healthcare Co-op in Nelson that is in some ways very much like what Kevin was just describing. So I'm afraid we'll have to come back to that. Also, there is a wonderful article written by John Rostakis, whom we invoke here frequently, kind of a profile of Community First Healthcare Co-op that we will drop into the Canvas. So maybe I will ask Tom to remind everybody what the Canvas is.
Yeah. So Canvas, are you able to hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm getting it frozen on my screen, but if you can hear me, that's great.
Yeah, the connection's not great, but I think we can hear you. You're freezing up a bit. I guess we're not. Well, sorry, bad connection. The canvases are
great. So learning Canvas, yeah, go.
We can drop a link in if you don't already have a link to it. Anybody got handy? Sorry, Tom. Not working. It's breaking up terribly. Anyway, we're going to drop in John Rostakis' profile into the Canvas so you can find that and many other articles and files. It's turning into a real treasure chest of stuff on the subject that not very many people know much about. So we are really accumulating a great archive here. So I encourage you, if you're not using the Canvas, to check in and look under modules. Under each module, you'll find the video of previous sessions, you'll find the transcript, you'll find the chat, and as I say, numerous articles. All right. Any other final thoughts? A lot to think about here. We're doing this thing that's going to be kind of standard, I think, in our conversations, also in a community of practice as we go forward. We're sort of working on two planes at the same time, kind of oscillating back and forth. There's the particular sector that we're talking about, and that was today the sector of disabled care. And there's much to know about that. Each one of these sectors is a whole universe, as we know. And at the same time, we're talking about the enterprise model, the business form that we're looking at to try to improve the situation, to deliver a new kind of care. And then there's even a third piece, which is the infrastructure around financing and technical support to make all this happen. So if this is not a grand scale collaborative project, I've never seen one. It's going to take a lot to stand up a whole new generation of social co-ops in the US, because as I'm increasingly saying, they're not really standalone businesses, most of them. They are each little ecosystems wrapped around with a community of some kind. And that's work. That's real community building, democratic governance. That's not the usual MO, which is a good thing that we have people like Kevin Bayak and his Next Economy MBA, by the way, I recommend, if you haven't heard of that, where they talk about these issues. Any other thoughts before we adjourn for next week? Good. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Thank you.
Soon, great to see you. Thanks for getting up so early. Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Thanks, Cindy.
Erica, everybody. And we will see you.
Well,
All right. Ciao, everybody.